Welcome to the Canarian International Meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Mossy and I am an alcoholic.
And my name is Mick and I'm also an alcoholic, both serving as your secretary today. Please join us in a moment's silence to remember the still suffering alcoholic, both inside and outside this meeting.
Kathy's going to read the preamble for us.
Hello, my name's Kathy and I am an alcoholic. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other that they may solve their common problems and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is an honest desire to stop drinking. AA has no dues or fees, is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And a warm welcome goes out to any newcomers or anyone returning to Alcoholics Anonymous.
The chat is now disabled until the end of the meeting, except for the meeting host. If you feel the meeting security is at risk at any time during the meeting, please private message one of the co-hosts so that they can check it out.
And that's it, guys. As you know, this is an old-timers meeting. And we've the privilege today of having Vibhishana to share with us. Vibhishana is staying in Galway. And that's where I met him a couple of years ago. So looking forward to hearing your story, Vibhishana. You've got about 40, 45 minutes, 50 minutes. It's up to you. Take it away, dude.
Holy smokesters. Here 45 minutes, I don't know. Well, I'm sure I could find something to talk about. I am Vibhishana. I am an alcoholic, and I'm grateful to be here. Thank you very much, Mossy, for the invitation. I, of course, first met Mossy, and I've heard and met a number of you online at this meeting, and then saw him in person at the first Knock Canarian convention, and so it's a delight. It's a delight to be here. I don't know. I don't think I've ever been asked to speak at an old timers meeting before. I'm not sure that I actually have ever really thought of myself as an old timer. I think Mossy shared with some of you my sobriety date is the 13th of October in 1989, which means that I have about just over 13,000 days. And you know, it's one of those things. It's just one day at a time. However, and it's one of these things that's interesting. I actually a local meeting here. I'm speaking to you from the tropical shores of Barna in County Galway, where we have been experiencing unusually hot and muggy weather. It's almost yesterday someone said to me, it feels like when you get off the airplane at some at some tropical holiday destination and the weather, the heat just blasts you. I was like, yeah, I know, it's up to like 20 degrees. It's really unseasonable. So anyway, like I said, I'm at a local meeting here that was up at the Chum meeting, and two friends of mine both celebrated 23 years on the same day, which I think is kind of an unusual thing to meet somebody who had the exact same sobriety date as you, and like something cosmic aligned for those two people to get sober at the same time. And like I think of them as old timers because I really enjoy what they have to share. They bring experience and they bring hope. But I don't know. Don't really think of myself that way. But Jillian, one of them, was talking to me and said, well, you know, it is just one day at a time. And so therefore, you know, today is all we have. But the fact of the matter is, of course, that, and this is what I said to Jillian, you know, is that I do now have some experience. I have some experience of being sober in life. And so therefore I have some perspective on the idea of the fact that life goes up and down, and my experience of sobriety goes up and down as well. And I remember I was in my first year, and my sponsor said to me, he said, well, it's like this. When you have 1 week sober, then you can like sort of look back and you say, well, Monday was like this, but Tuesday was sort of like this, and then Wednesday was shite, and then, and then when you have like a month sober, then you can look back and you can say, wow, the first week was really different from the second week. And he said, and when you get a year, you'll be able to look back and you'll see that over the course of a year, you've had different experiences in each month. And, this is the thing about the human experience, is that it is an opportunity for us to learn. My belief is that we are all spirit beings, and that we are having experiences in life in this human form. And it's further my personal belief that I am in this human form in order to try and learn, and in order to try and grow spiritually as much as possible. And hopefully then to be able to enlarge myself spiritually. And it was interesting, actually. I was just talking to a guy who's got about a year, and we were talking a little bit about our higher powers and what we believe, and in terms of our spiritual experience. And he said, well, I see it that in life, it's sort of like a little droplet of water evaporates from the ocean and goes up into the sky, and then eventually coalesces with another drop and comes back down as rain to rejoin the ocean. And so he said, hopefully, when I die, I will rejoin the ocean, and I will bring some contribution back to the ocean that I gained of spiritual growth during this life of mine. And I thought to myself, that's like, I don't think I've ever heard anybody put it exactly like that, but it's a very beautiful way to think of this journey that we're on. And I do believe that one of the most powerful components of the spiritual growth, my spiritual growth in this lifetime, has been my experience of getting sober and being a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. And, I have to say, when I came to my first meeting, I was not looking for a spiritual awakening. When I came to my first meeting, I was not looking for a relationship with a higher power. I certainly was not interested in learning how to pray. Um, and I thought that basically how I was pretty much just fine. My problem really is other people. And if somebody had said to me, this is going to be a wild spiritual journey, a real roller coaster, I would not have been very attracted to that promise. But the fact of the matter is that I have learned, and it's kind of an amazing, it's like this idea that like pushing a prayer wheel could be a spiritual practice. Saying a prayer every day could be a spiritual practice. Not picking up a drink one day at a time could be a spiritual practice. Just that simple thing of not picking up one day at a time could be um, that could be the practice that transforms me spiritually. And I was not prepared for or interested in any such thing. But what has happened is that time has passed. I have, both as a matter of luck and as a matter of personal effort, been able to stay sober, and I didn't die. And that was the promise that was given to me. There was this guy named Jay Bumberg, and he had 23 years, or no, I guess he had 28. I think he had 28 years when I got sober, and he was the old man in my home group. And I remember like everybody deferred to Jay. And I remember he once said to me, if you don't drink, you won't get drunk. And that's the promise. And I was like, well, that's pretty straightforward. I think I can understand that. And, you know, I mean, it's like, what more promise do you need? If you don't drink, you won't get drunk. And later, he was in and out of the hospital. He had a congestive heart failure, and that's eventually what killed him. He said, if you don't drink and you don't die, well, then you get to be old in AA. And so those are some of the basic promises that were given to me. And so I guess I've become an old timer because I didn't drink and I didn't die. And so I'll just talk a little bit about my journey. Um, uh, I got sober in New York City. And in New York, we used to say this was a qualification. It's like you sit down up front and you give your qualifications. How am I qualified to be here? And here in Galway, where I live now, they say, "Oh, he's doing the chair. He's doing the chair, taking the chair." And so I kind of like that idea that, well, how am I qualified to be here? Well, I am an alcoholic because of the fact that if you show me something that I can do that will make me feel good, I will do it until it makes me feel bad. And then when I am sick and I'm really in pain, I will do it again in the hopes that it will work like the first time, even though it hasn't worked for years. And that's my understanding of being an alcoholic. You know, the book says that my drinking is just a symptom. It's a symptom of my disease, that clearly the problem lies in my thinking. And I believe that the symptoms of my disease are multifactorial. They are wide. I can look to a drink to try and change me. I can look to a drug. I can look to just about any kind of behavior. And if it works once, I will soon become addicted to it. And I will continue to try and get that same good feeling that I got the first time. So I was born in Germany. My father was in the United States military, and he was in the intelligence department, and he was helping the Americans beat communism. And so at the time, we were in Germany looking at Russians, and I spent my first couple of years there. They tell me that my first words were German, and because we had a child minder who was German. But certainly my first drink was in Germany, and and it was German beer. And so before I was even 3 years old, they tell the story of how I found a drink down on the table that had been put down there by one of my parents, and that I drank it. My mother used to tell the story that there were 4 martini glasses on the table, and I was just about old enough to be able to stand up at the edge of the table and hold myself steady standing, and I could pick up a glass, and I drank all 4 of them. And I said, well, that's interesting. I said, so what did you do when this little baby drank those 4 martinis? And they were like, well, you went to sleep, so we figured you were okay. And I don't remember that drink. I also, and I have to say this, my parents loved me. I was the firstborn. They were excited that I was there. One of the things, my parents hired a professional photographer to come over and take baby pictures of me. And so he was there in the apartment, and I was many years sober when I found this cache of pictures going through my mom's stuff after she died. And so there were these professional photographs they had taken of me when I was not yet old enough to stand, but I could sit upright. And one of the pictures shows my father holding me and holding a glass of beer up to my lips so that I could drink it. And then there's another photograph of me actually holding the glass and drinking the beer out of the glass. And, you know, that struck me as kind of interesting. It's like they had a professional photographer take pictures of me because they loved me and were proud of me being their firstborn child. And yet they're feeding me beer before, you know, shortly after I have been weaned of my mother's milk. And I just sort of think that by today's standard would be not considered necessarily the best treatment of a child. So I don't remember my first drink. And what I do remember is that by the time I was 5 or 6, I was going into my father's bar. By that time, we had moved to South America. We were living in South America, and he had a fully stocked bar so he could entertain people. At that time, he was trying to keep an eye on Castro, and and I would go behind the bar and I would take the bottles and take a swig out of them to see which ones I liked. And there were certain ones I remember in particular, like the sherry and the port, that tasted sweet. And I liked them, and I liked the way I felt when I drank them. So I was about, you know, again, 5 or 6 years old. And the thing about it, I mean, looking back on that, I knew that the reason why there was violence in my home was because my father came home drunk. And my mother would say to us, by that time there were 3 of us, and my mother would say to us, stay away from him when he's like that. And I understood that this had to do with alcohol. I understood that my parents would get into these violent fights, and that if they didn't get into a fight, that meant that one of us kids was going to get a severe punishment, because somebody was going to have to pay for the fact that my dad was drunk and he was unhappy. And and I remember thinking to myself, I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to be like this. I am not going to, I'm not going to be this, I'm not going to be like him. No matter what happens, I'm not going to be like him. And yet here I am going and stealing his drinks, because the fact that when I take drinks of his bottles, I don't feel afraid. I don't feel small. I don't feel like I want to kill myself. And and so that's my story. My drinking began alone at home with nobody watching, because I couldn't stand how I felt on the inside and I wanted to kill my feelings. And that's not social drinking. And I have to say that I occasionally hear people talk about that. They talk about how they had, you know, a history of social drinking that they enjoyed. And then suddenly one day they discovered they had crossed some line and were now alcoholic. And I don't really understand that, because that's not my story. That wasn't my experience. I was less than 10 years old, and my mother would, you know, lock me in my bedroom and say to me, when your father comes home, he's going to hear about this and you're going to be punished. And then I would be in my room by myself and I would be terrified. And I would be thinking to myself, if I kill myself, I will, they'll be sorry. And so I was already thinking about how to kill myself so that I could stop how I felt. And what I discovered was that if I put substances in my body, I could basically achieve that effect. And so I drank what my father drank. I drank what my mother drank. When I was a teenager, I used to get into a lot of trouble because my mother would discover that I was drinking her gin. She had a 2 liter bottle of Tanqueray that she kept on hand to entertain. And I don't know who she was planning to entertain, but I was the one who was opening it up and drinking it. And when she found out that I was, she was furious. She said, you know, when I need that for guests, I need to have it. And I was like, I'll just buy you another bottle. It's fine. And that wasn't good enough. She was angry because I was drinking her Tanqueray. I had alcohol available to me on a daily basis. Obviously, I couldn't buy it myself up until a certain point. Obviously, my parents didn't necessarily like me drinking their alcohol, and so sometimes I couldn't get into it. But I was pretty much a daily drinker by the time I was in my teens. And when I was 16 years old, I learned how to drive. And by this time, my father had retired from the military. Um, what happened was actually that he killed somebody drunk driving, and the government of the country that we were living in said to the United States government, you have to get this guy out of here, because otherwise we're probably going to have to charge him with, you know, killing somebody. And so we left we left and returned to the United States. And I was about 10 years old when we got to the United States. And I'd never been there before. And I was really shocked to discover that television was color and they spoke English. And I was also shocked because of the fact that I had a woman who lived in our house who got me up in the morning and took me to school. She got me breakfast. She was my mamacita, and she was not white and she didn't speak English. And I came back to the United States, and we were no longer, you know, living in this foreign country. My parents could no longer afford house care and housekeepers and seamstresses and gardeners. And we were back to being lower middle income white people. And I discovered that I discovered I'm not a Spanish speaking brown person. I'm actually a white kid, and I'm living in the South. And it was a very bizarre awakening. And I didn't really identify with the culture, and I didn't identify with the people around me. And then when I was 16, I learned how to drive. We were living in the southeastern part of the United States. Um, and in that part of, in that part of the country, they had what they called drive-through liquor stores. And so you drive up to the window, and you tell them what you want, and they hand it out and you pay. And so I would do that. And if they asked me for my ID card, I would just drive through, and I'd go to another place, and eventually I would be able to get what I wanted. And I was able to buy my own liquor. I was able to buy my own beer. And I became more than just a daily drinker. I became a person who felt that drinking alcohol was a part of my daily life. And I'll say this, you know, years later, when I, you know, got into AA, you know, it was sort of a shock to me. You know, I never craved a drink until I stopped drinking and was in AA, because I didn't crave a drink. If I wanted to drink, I drank. I had never had any withdrawal symptoms. I'd never had any real negative symptoms from drugs or alcohol until I got into AA, and I stopped, and I began to have withdrawal, and I began to have cravings. My experience was that, you know, if I'm breathing, then I'm drinking and I'm using. And if somebody had said, "Don't you think you should cut back on your drinking?" I would have said to them, should I cut back on my breathing too? This is part of who I am. This is how I experience the world, and this is how I manage my feelings. I was somewhat shocked to be living in the southern United States. I didn't really feel that I fit in very well, and they didn't feel that I fit in either. I was at work. I was at work yesterday, and one of the customers was talking to me and said, "Why is your hair blue?" And I said, well, the truth of the matter is that I was born with blue hair, and I spent the first several decades trying to cover it up so that I would fit in and look normal. Whatever you thought normal was, that's how I wanted to be. And eventually I got to a place where I decided I just want to be me. And so I let the blue hair come out. And the fact of the matter is that I was, you know, living down there, and they looked at me and they were like, something about that boy ain't right. He just ain't right. And I don't know why. I don't know why. I got my first piercing in uh, I guess 1974, and I don't know why I got a piercing. Um, Nobody I knew had one, but it seemed like a cool thing to do that I wanted to do. And people would be like, "Are you Indian? I know some Indian people who have, like earrings and nose rings and stuff. Are you one of them?" I'm like, "Nope, I am not." And so I didn't feel that really fit in, and I was like, "Where's my people?" And I was 15 years old, and I was doing some volunteer work at the hospital, and I met these guys. They were men, actually, and they were nurses. And they were like, "How'd you like to come over to our place for some drinks?" And they invited me. They drove me down to Orlando so that we could go to movies and shows and clubs. And I discovered that there was this world of nice men who were friendly and who would buy me drinks and provide me with drugs. And all I really needed to do was be cute. And that was my entry into a whole new world. And it led me to places where that I, places that I didn't even know really existed because, to be honest, I was just a dumb hick who was in a small town and who just wanted my feelings to go away. Eventually, I ran away from home. Uh, I did not graduate from secondary school, but I got into a university. I left where I was and I went to a university, and then I went to another one, and then I went to another one. And in the end, I went to school for 8 years, and I didn't get a degree. And you know, this I have to say is, the pattern of my life is that I was going to classes, or not going to classes, sometimes not showing up. And I thought that the purpose of being at the university was to drink and to do drugs and to have sex and to experience a kind of a wild life that didn't really involve work, and I thought that was what I was there for. And if I had a problem with school, the problem was that there weren't any good teachers. If there had been good teachers, well, then they would have recognized my native brilliance, and I would have gotten better grades, and I probably would have graduated and gotten a degree. And I remember towards the end of my 8th year, there was the school I was at was it was a Catholic university, and so they required that I had to take classes on religion and classes on Catholicism and classes on philosophy. And so one of the required courses was this philosophy course, and I really liked the teacher, but I just couldn't really be bothered by doing the work. I liked going to class, and we were supposed to read these books and we were supposed to discuss the authors. And his thought was that we would keep a journal. During the semester, we would keep a journal of all of our experiences of this philosophy class. And I didn't. I didn't read the books. I went to class and I listened to people talk about stuff and I joined in the debates, but I didn't write anything down. And at the end of the semester, he said, "Now turn in your journal for the final grade." So I needed to write an entire month's worth of journal entries in 2 nights. So I got some speed and I got some alcohol and I stayed up and I wrote this brilliant essay. It was about a page long, in which I explained that I really am not interested in philosophy. I'm really not interested in Socrates or Plato or Descartes. I'm really not interested in them because I have my own thoughts, and I think my thoughts are the most important. And I turned that essay in, and he called me into the office and he said, "What this essay tells me is that you have failed to engage in this class in any manner. And this is a required class to graduate. And I'm sorry to tell you this, but I really feel that if I give you even a D to pass, then I have failed my responsibility to this university because they think this class is important. So I'm going to fail you, and you are not going to graduate in 2 days. And I'm sorry." And I walked out of there seething with resentment because, of course, now my educational career had been destroyed by this egotistical asshole professor who thought he was so smart and was teaching philosophy. You know, it wasn't until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous and I started to do a fourth step that I ever began to look at these assumptions, these base assumptions that I made in my life, which were that basically I never got what I needed, and everybody else seems to have gotten their stuff, and I don't have the stuff that's going to make me happy, and it's your fault. And nobody understands this. And so therefore, if you have stuff, then I have the right to take it because I want it. And I I have today come to believe that one of the spiritual ailments that most humans experience as a result of being in these physical bodies is that we have physical hunger. And I want stuff. I am like the goldfish in the goldfish bowl. My mouth is always, "Give me, feed me, give me physical stuff so that my physical body feels sated." And uh, um, and it's an illusion, of course, because there is no physical material that can really make me happy. There's no physical material that can make me feel sated, that can make me feel comfortable, that will make me feel at peace in my own body. But that's what I was focused on. And I believe that alcoholics of my type are really just people who have the human condition in an extreme degree. And that's part of the reason why, when I finally left school and I went to New York, I ran away, wound up in New York. And, there I found a whole world of people who were pursuing wealth and fame and who were, some of them, working very hard to get there. I often joke that Tom Ford and Keith Haring and myself all arrived in New York City the same month. And Tom Ford, of course, is a multi-billionaire designer, and Keith Haring became a world famous artist, and I eventually became a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought of myself as being certainly equal in brilliance and talent to them, but the problem was that really all I wanted was I wanted to find the substance that would help me to just not feel or to feel okay. And so New York is a phenomenal place. It's I'm extremely grateful that I lived there. In the end, I wound up living in New York City for 17 years. It is a city of immigrants, and it's a city of people who come there trying to find themselves, and it will create the opportunity for you to either succeed spectacularly, like Tom Ford, or fail spectacularly. And I found myself waking up on the subway at the end of the train line, and the train had stopped running, and I didn't know where I was, and I didn't know where the train was, and I didn't know what time or what day it was. And I would wake up and I'd start walking along through the quiet, empty train and trying to figure out, well, where am I? How do I get home? And how did I get here? Um, I I didn't know that if you drink and drug enough, that your brain stops processing data and that you can be awake and alive and you can buy drinks and get on the subway and you can talk to people and even talk your way into their bedroom and then not process any of the data. It's like the information doesn't go into the storage cabinet. And so then the next day, everything is a gray haze, and I don't remember. And I might wake up in somebody's bed, I might wake up in some subway car, or I might wake up in my own bed and have no idea where I was. And it wasn't until I came to Alcoholics Anonymous that I found out that that is not a normal experience of drinking. It's a normal experience for many of us who drank, but it's not everybody's experience. And in fact, it is possible. There are people out there, they tell me, who can drink and then remember what they said and actually have accountability for all of their behavior, and the next day be able to tell you who they were and where they went. I had no idea. I thought that was pretty much the natural part of drinking and using. And I do mention that it's one of the things I find very amusing is in the beginning of some AA meetings, they say, we are in Alcoholics Anonymous, we restrict ourselves to alcoholism, and we share about how alcoholism affected our lives. And I'm like, there is no part of my life that was not affected by my alcoholism. And that includes my drug use, and that includes my sex life, that includes my financial life, that includes my professional life. As I said, the problem with the teachers, there were just no good teachers. The problem with my employers, similarly, no good employers. If I got a lot of jobs. When I was living in New York, I had a lot of jobs, and I often was given positions of responsibility, but I expected that you should make me the boss. Like, I walk in here and you should make me the boss. You should immediately recognize my innate skill and my native talent. And you should say, well, I don't know how we got along without you. You're the new boss. And when that didn't happen, I would become resentful. And then when I was resentful, I would be like, you know what? And and your whole company sucks. And then I would notice, for example, that there might be things laying around like tools or supplies or money in petty cash. And I'm like, you know what? You're not paying me enough. And so I'm going to pay myself. I'm going to take home the things that would be useful to me. And I had tools that I at home that I didn't pay for. And I had other people's belongings that I picked up at work. And that's not stealing. If you had asked me, I would tell you I am not stealing. What I'm doing is I'm getting what's really mine, and it should have been mine. And if this world were fair, do you understand the problem? The world's just not fair. And And I'm going to fix that by I'm going to redistribute the wealth in a way that's more fair. So I didn't consider myself to be a thief. I certainly didn't consider myself to be a liar. And yet, you know, when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I had this most amazing thing happen where I discovered that, like, I could not tell the truth. And I would be like, after a meeting out for coffee with somebody, or I could even be at work or something, and somebody would say something as simple as, well, did you see that new movie? And I would say, yes. And then I'd think to myself, why did I say yes? I didn't see that movie. But, you know, I read the review in the New York Times. And so therefore, I would like wax poetic about something they talked about in the review as if I had seen the movie. Like, what difference to me does it make whether you think that I've seen the movie or not, or read the book or not, or been to the park or not, or saw the parade or not? What difference does it make to me whether you think I did or not? But if anybody asked me, I always said, yes, I have done that. Yes, I know that. Yes, I have experienced that. And then I would create some fabrication, and I discovered I can't stop lying. I cannot stop lying. And part of this is because of the fact that when I meet somebody new, my first job is to try and read your mind. Who do you want me to be? And how do I be that person? And I would do this in the clubs, I would do this at work, and I would do this just about any place. And it was, you know, extremely taxing. And it was extremely problematic because if somebody from this part of my life and somebody from this part of my life showed up at the same club at the same time, I don't know who to be, because I've been, you know, I've been a young gay boy with this person, and I've been a serious worker with this person. So who am I supposed to be? I don't know. And uh, um, the only way that I can deal with that is by trying to put substances in my body in order to balance out my feelings and in order to take away my fear of consequences, my inhibition about action, and any sense of self that I have. Because my sense of self is really a sense of self-loathing. So my bottom was that my bottom was that I would wake up in the morning and my first thought when I woke up was, oh shit, because I didn't die. I had somehow hoped that maybe somehow last night I would have just died in my sleep. I had an apartment that was on the 8th floor, and I would sit and I would look out the window and I would think to myself, am I high enough? If I jump, will I die? And on the ground floor, there was a big glassed atrium over a swimming pool. And I thought, well, if I fall through the glass, maybe I would die of drowning in the pool. But it sounded very messy and it sounded painful. And I didn't have the courage. And so my hope was that somehow I would just die or something would happen. And there were a lot of times when I wound up drunk and stumbling through the streets in a bad part of town. I was assaulted, I was mugged, but I didn't die. And so what happened was that there was this woman who I knew, and when I had met her, her jaw was wired shut. She and I were in school together. By this time, I had gone back to school because I had decided that I finally was just going to get a degree, and I was going to get a degree and I was going to become a professional. And if I have if I can get a graduate degree, then people will look up to me. And if people look up to me, then maybe I'll feel better about myself. And if I feel better about myself, maybe I won't be trying to kill myself. And I was in class next to this woman, Mary, and she smelled terrible. And whenever I was in class, I would try to sit someplace other than her, but it always wound up that I was close enough. And her jaw was wired shut and she smelled terrible. And I was like, I don't know what this person's problem is, but I do not like her. And a couple of years later, I was no longer in school and I met her on the street. And she was finishing her master's degree in biology and was going to become a professor, she thought. And she looked great and she smelled great. And I was like, what happened to Mary? I don't know. And one day when I was drunk, I called Mary up and I wanted to ask her, like, what happened? What happened to you? And I don't really remember the call, but she says that what I said to her was a lot of nonsense. And she finally said, are you trying to find out if I'm in AA or not? And I said, yes. And she said to me, why don't we meet? Why don't we meet at the diner on 79th and First Avenue, and I'll talk to you. So I had 2 cans of beer in 2 paper bags, and I walked along slowly and I drank them. And I got to the diner and I met Mary, and she said, you know, right next door at St. Monica's is a meeting. And instead of me talking to you, why don't we just go to the meeting? And I was afraid. I was afraid. I thought I had to go. If I didn't go, I didn't know, like, she would think I was a chicken or something. So we went to this meeting, and it was in the basement of this church. I'd never been in the church before, and this guy was up front, and he was talking about doing cocaine and living in Denver. I've never lived in Denver, and I don't really like cocaine. It's not a drug I enjoy. And so I thought to myself, well, this is a big mistake. But then he said, I felt like there was a hole inside, and I felt that there was something missing, and I felt that there was something wrong with me. And I was putting things into that hole in order to try and fill that. And it didn't work. And I kept feeling worse, and the hole kept getting bigger. And when he said that, I had my first spiritual awakening. It was the first time that I had ever heard anybody describe alcoholism to me. And it was the first time I'd ever had an opportunity to identify with somebody. And in the middle of that meeting, someplace, somehow, I suddenly had this thought, what if it's the alcohol? I suddenly, like, it was like this thing of like, oh my God, what if it's the alcohol? Like, what if it's the drinking? What if it's the drugs? What if that's my problem? And it was horrifying to me, and it was terrifying to me. And I left that meeting, and I don't remember saying anything to Mary or not, but I left and I went home, and I did not drink the rest of the night. I was really upset, and I was really afraid that I had become my father. I was really afraid that I had become this thing. And the next day, I found out that that church actually had a meeting every day. And the next day, I snuck back in. Nobody knew that I was going into the meeting. And I sat in the back, and I have no idea who was there or what they said, but I had the same feeling. I had the feeling that there was something that was wrong with me and that it involved my drinking and that I needed to stop. And I didn't know if I could stop. And I was really afraid and I felt really alone. And so Mary had said to me, she said, Friday night is my home group. I didn't know what that meant. She said, if you're serious and you decide that you want to stop drinking, come to my meeting on Friday night and I'll introduce you to some of the guys. Now, I did not want to meet any guys, and I did not want to go to any home group. I didn't want to see Mary again. but somehow I had this thought that like she was telling me something that was going to make a difference. And so I went to that meeting, and there were these guys, and they were old. Oh my God. I mean, I was at the time, so at the time I was 30. Um, uh, I, uh, I I got sober 1 month after my 30th birthday. At the time I was 30, and I was still making my living in part by my looks and in part by what I could get out of people. And I met these guys who were, I don't know, probably in their 50s. They were like fucking ancient. And they didn't understand me, and they didn't understand who I was, and they didn't understand my lifestyle. Well, I have a lifestyle. And and they talked to me about like we go to this meeting and we go to that meeting and we do this and we don't drink in between the meetings and oh, God, they were really annoying. So I did not decide that I did not want what they had. I did not want what they had. When I read the book with a newcomer, I always go back and I always read the preface. I always read the preface and the forewords. And part of the reason why I do that is because of the fact that at the bottom of the preface, it says, when we read these personal stories, we hope that you may think, yes, that happened to me. Well, that doesn't really happen to me very often. A lot of times people talk about social drinking, and especially here in Ireland, people talk about being in pubs and stuff like that. I was never in a pub in my life. They talk about drinking Guinness. I don't even, they talk about what happened to me. And they say, but more importantly, yes, I've felt like that. And that's what got me, was that I was in these rooms with people who I did not recognize, people who I did not like, people who I did not want to be like, and they did not have what I wanted, but I felt like they were talking about how they felt. They talked about not feeling good and not wanting to be alive and not wanting to feel and trying to blot out the misery of their existence. And that I recognized. And then, most important, yes, I believe this program can work for me too. And I do have to say, I was kind of stuck on that second step because I looked around at you guys. You guys look like you've got your lives together. You dress up kind of nice. I did not have a problem with my life being unmanageable. I couldn't pay rent. And so therefore, I was sleeping on the floor in the hall of somebody's apartment building. They lived in an apartment building that had a lot of abandoned empty apartments. And so I put a futon down on the floor in the hallway, and that's what I slept on. That's not unmanageable. That's me managing the problem that they want me to pay rent in order to live in a place, and that's just not fair. And I shouldn't have to spend my money like that because I want to spend my money on drinking. So I've managed my life. And when they said, was your life unmanageable? I'm like, no, my life is not unmanageable. I'm managing quite well. I haven't been to a dentist in 15 years. I haven't been to the last time I went to a doctor, they told me that my liver was my liver levels were dangerously abnormal and I needed to go see a specialist. And I, I was managing these problems. And I looked at you all and you seemed happy and you seemed together and you were well dressed and you laughed and talked to each other like you were friends. And I didn't think that you could understand how I felt. And I didn't think that you could understand the depths of my problem. I mean, like, I'm a seriously messed up person and I have serious problems. And 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 you guys certainly can't have ever experienced what it feels like to be me. But people talked about how they felt in terms of the depths of their bottoms, and I believed that. And eventually, what happened was I came to believe that maybe you weren't all lying. Maybe some of you had been to where I had been. and to the place of wishing to be dead and not being able to be dead. And so that was for me one of the hard journeys that I had. And so for a long time, well, it really wasn't that long, but for the first like 14 months, I just didn't drink and I went to meetings. And I went to a meeting a day. Sometimes I went to 2 meetings a day. That church on 79th Street has like 40 meetings a week. And you could go at 7 o'clock in the morning and you could go at 10 o'clock at night. And it was amazing. I would go to 2 meetings a day, sometimes 3 meetings a day. I would help set up. I'd make coffee. I would clean the ashtrays. I'd put the chairs out. I would do that kind of stuff. And you know, I do have to say, you know, back then we could smoke in meetings, which for me was a blessing because I was smoking 3 packs a day. I'm the kind of addict that, yes, like, you know, for me, one cigarette equals 3 packs a day. I cannot smoke less than 3 packs a day. I would, if there was enough time, if it weren't for the 24-hour limit, I'd probably be able to get 4 packs in. But the the blessing of being able to have a job and cleaning ashtrays, and I just did that for about 14 months. And what happened was that I became angrier and angrier, and I became more and more upset. And people would talk about, you know, and this was in New York. So in New York, people actually talked about a program. They talked about a recovery. They talked about living life like, or wearing life like a loose garment and living happy, joyous, and free. And people would talk about this kind of stuff. And they would talk about how they did this program and they got this thing. And I would look at those scrolls at the front of the room, and they were covered with the G word. And I was not going to pray, and I wasn't going to talk to anybody about that damn G word because I just don't believe. I just refuse to believe. And I was holding on to the bottom of my seat as hard as I could. And I was angry. I was upset. I was resentful. I didn't understand why other people seemed to be expressing, you know, joy and relief, and I wasn't experiencing it. And I was also in a relationship with a beautiful person, a beautiful young woman, and and I was acting like an asshole. And on a regular basis, she would say to me, "You can't treat me like this. Go home." And uh, I was like, I just don't know what the problem is because I'm going to meetings and I'm not drinking, but I wasn't doing anything else. I remember I went to one of those old guys one time and I said, "Should I be reading this book?" And he said, "I wouldn't worry about that so much. Why don't you just practice reading first?" And I was like highly offended. But you know, what I discovered, much to my shock, was that I actually couldn't read. That reading the funnies at the back of the post was about as the limit of what I could, because my problem was if I tried to read the book, by the time I got to the bottom of a page, I couldn't remember what was at the top of the page. I was seriously damaged. And for much of that first year, what I was doing was I was detoxing. For much of that first year, what I was doing was I was physically recuperating from what I had done to my body. But eventually, what happened was I was at a meeting, and there was this really great guy, Mike O, and he was sitting up at the front, and he went through his recovery, and he talked about how he admitted he was powerless and about how he came to believe and how he said a prayer and took a step, and then he did an inventory and he talked about it, and then he talked about how he did his amends, and he talked about how now he was working his 12th step, and he talked about the benefits of doing that and how his life had changed and he felt better as he didn't just feel better as a human being, he felt like a human being. And I went up to him after the meeting and I said, "How do I get what you have?" And he was like, "Well, I'll tell you what, I'll introduce you to my sponsor." I'd never heard anybody talk like that. Now, the fact of the matter is, I'd been to hundreds of meetings over the preceding 14 months, and I'm sure people had talked about the steps. I'm sure that people had talked about recovery and had talked about the actions they'd taken, but I had not been able to hear it because I was so wrapped up in myself. And in New York, they call it the rucka-ruckaroo. I had in between my ears a rucka-ruckaroo that was killing me. And uh, is somebody waving at me and telling me that I'm at 19 minutes and I should stop? Anyway, so what happened was that I was able to hear it for the first time. And so this guy introduced me to his sponsor, Dave, Dave P. And I said, Dave, I want what you have. And he said to me, you can't get it. He said, I know you. You are intellectually arrogant, you're proud, you're a liar, and you're not capable of doing this, and you're going to die drunk. And he got my attention. And I said, okay, Dave, what I'm going to do is whatever you're doing, I'm going to uh, um, uh, I'm I'm going to do whatever you do. And I'm going to follow you around. I started going to the meetings where he was. And eventually he said, okay, fine. Here's the story. Here's what we do. I will meet with you once a week and we will formally talk about the steps and we'll go through the steps. And in the meantime, every morning when you wake up, I want you to get on your knees and I want you to say, please help me. And then during the day, I want you to call another alcoholic and talk to them. And I want you to go to a meeting. And I want you to take out your big book and I want you to read 2 pages out of your book. And then at night, I want you to get down on your knees and say thank you. And it's a 5-point program. I want you to do those things. And in the meantime, we're going to meet and you're going to start doing some writing. And I said to him, I don't pray, and I certainly don't pray on my knees. And he said, then you're going to start. And I remember talking to somebody and I said to them that I have this problem because I don't believe in God. And they were like, that's fine. You don't need to believe in God. You just need to do the work. You just need to take the actions. And I was like, well, who am I praying to? And they said, it doesn't matter. And you wouldn't understand it even if you knew. And I was like, whoa. And I didn't like that. I didn't like being told to do something that I didn't understand so that I would get a benefit that I didn't believe in. And what happened was that I, of course, started doing it, but I also started talking to people about like, what am I praying to? What is this thing? What is this thing? What is this all about? And over again, people in meetings in New York would say to me, you need a bigger God. You got to get a bigger God. And it took me a good while to understand what that meant. My problem is that I think I am unlovable. My problem is that I think that there is no power in this universe that is big enough that it can care for me because I am basically, I'm fucked up. I'm a bad actor. And I don't believe that there is such a thing as a loving higher power. There may be some, prime mover that created the stars. There may be some like, big bang that started everything off, but that's not the same as some power that's going to give a damn in terms of whether or not I drink or not. And this was the beginning of my journey. This was the beginning of my journey as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous because I had to grow spiritually to be able to learn that there could possibly be a power. Number one, I'm not that bad. Number two, I'm not that powerful. And number three, there could possibly be a power in the universe that knows me and loves me and cares for me. I much later had another sponsor who used to say to me, my higher power knows me by my name. And to me, that was a revolutionary concept. The idea that I'm not just on my knees saying words into the air in the hopes that it's somehow going to do something, but I'm actually communicating with a real power that really exists in this universe and really cares for me. And that sponsor used to say to me, in the third step is the single most important word in all the steps, and that's the word care. I turn my life and my will over to the care of a higher power. That means a power that cares. I'm not just turning it over to the trash man. I'm not just turning it over to the cops. I'm not just turning it over to my sponsor, who's a flawed human being. There is a power that cares. And this is where I have to start growing in the middle, and where that hole is, there starts now to be a light that's beginning to grow, you know? And one of my favorite stories is the one where Arjun is talking to Krishna and he says, you know, I really know you. And I just want you to reveal yourself to me. Just show me that you're God. Just show me the power of being God, because I really, like, I believe in you. And Krishna is like, you can't handle it, man. And Arjun's like, no, I'm a faithful person. I really believe. And so Krishna, just for a moment, says, this is what God looks like. And Arjun's like, whoa, stop. I can't take it. I can't take it. And this is my experience. This is my experience of what it's like as a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, is the power that's available here, the power that's available to me to solve my life's problems is limitless. And there actually is a power that cares for me. And the more that I buy into that, and the more that I build my relationship with that, then the more peace I find, and the more comfort I find, and the more comfortable I am in my own skin. I have a friend here who likes to say that the whole purpose of this program is to have step 3 and step 11 come together so that they're touching. That's what this whole 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 thing is all about, is that if I can just get 3 and 11 to touch, so that in every moment of my life, I'm saying, I am yours. Do with me what you want. And then I'm stopping and I'm listening and saying to my higher power, communicate to me your caring nature so that I can express it in this world. If I'm doing that, then these promises from the 10th step begin to come true. Like, if I'm tempted by behavior that is destructive to me, I recoil as if from a hot flame. I am not fighting booze. The desire has just been lifted from me, and it's as simple as that. And you know, the gifts of the old timers that I've known, I have to say I'm very grateful to Gino. Gino had 21 years, an upstanding member of Alcoholics Anonymous, did not drink, killed himself, shot himself in the head sitting in his car, because of the fact that his gambling debts had gotten so out of control that he couldn't think of anything to do to fix his problem except to kill himself. And all the members of AA who knew him, and even his family, were shocked. Like, we didn't even know he had a problem. I am so grateful to my friend Scott, who had 32 years. And Scott liked to pick up newcomers and bring them home. And one day, one of the newcomers said, "What do you mean I'm only here for the night? I thought I was moving in." And she set fire to his house and burnt his house down, because he was not able to see that his sexual behavior was out of control and causing him to have unmanageability in his life. These were old timers who had stopped drinking and were not using drugs, and they had not been able to apply the principles of these steps. They had not been able to do steps 6 and 7 in every aspect of their life. And for me today, this is part of my challenge. You know, everybody knows that beautiful story in the book where Jim thinks that if I just put a little bit of whiskey into my milk, I'm going to be okay. And if I drink some whiskey on a full stomach, I'm all right. And so I have a sponsor today who says to me, what is the whiskey you're putting into your milk today? And he doesn't mean actual real alcohol, because I have no desire to have a drink. it doesn't even cross my mind. But if I'm at work and I'm walking out the door and I notice they just got a delivery of printer paper and there's 50 cases of printer paper and I have a printer at home with no paper, I could just pick one of these up and walk out the door and no one would know except me. Because today I know that's stealing. It's dishonest. It is violating the trust that my employer has given to me. I remember when my sponsor said to me, get to work on time. And I'm like, what has that got to do with drinking? And he said, you're being paid to be there at 8 o'clock. And if you get there at 8:15, you've just stolen money from your employer. And that means that you're not spiritually sound. You're a thief and a liar. And if you continue to behave like that, you're going to pick up. And I know that, when I am tempted, and I love this part of the, how Bill wrote in the sixth step in the 12 by 12. He says, all of us have these instincts. All of us are this goldfish, like more, feed me, give me something physical that's going to like fill my sense of spiritual need. When that comes up for me, I need to recognize it for what it is, because I am an alcoholic. That means I cannot tolerate. I can't just gamble a little. I can't just have loose sex a little. I can't just steal from the government a little. I can't just not pay my taxes a little. I can't just lie a little. I am going to go all in. And so that means I am constantly looking at my behavior and seeing how does it measure up to this ideal. And when I talk to newcomers and we're doing our fourth step, and I say, like, here's your chance. You do your sexual inventory. You have your sex ideal. And if you tell me your sex ideal is blah, 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 I'm like, fine. I am not the arbiter. I am not your arbiter. I don't care what you say or do. But if you then tell me that this is your ideal and you're doing something else that's contra to it, I'm going to point out to you that you are not living up to your own ideal. Alcoholics Anonymous has allowed me to come to understand what is my ideal. Who do I want to be? Who do I think I can be? Who do I believe myself to be? And I can be comfortable in that. Today, I'm comfortable in my own skin, no matter what my hair color, no matter what the color of my clothing, no matter what country I'm in. I am comfortable in my skin. I feel comfortable being who I am. I am comfortable in my relationship with my higher power. And I am comfortable when I am on my knees in the morning and the things I say, there are certain words that have been taught to me. And I like one of them is relieve me of the bondage of self. The power of those words is unbelievable to me. What is my problem? My problem is bondage of self. I feel bound to this human body, which is just a carrier. I feel bound to this idea of who I am, which is made up. Relieve me of the bondage of self. And then I say, like the moon reflects the sun, let me reflect your light in this world today. Because I believe that's my relationship with my higher power. I want to be a channel through which our power will allow me to carry a message of light and hope. The message that I've gotten from Alcoholics Anonymous. I believe today that there is a power in the universe that's so big that it even likes me. It knows me by my name and it cares for me and it cares how the day goes for me and it will carry me through difficult times and it will carry me through to the day of my death. And I guess the most amazing miracle of all is I no longer want to kill myself. I no longer want to die. I actually am okay with being alive. I I don't really look forward to becoming an old timer. I don't want to be an old timer because I don't want to really be old. I see what old looks like, and it's like kind of decrepit and weakened, and I don't like that physical. I don't like that physical promise. But I'm okay with it. If my higher power wants me to live longer and get older, well, then I'm just going to try and do that, and I'm going to try and do it with grace, and I'm going to try and do it as a channel of what I have learned here, which is, what if I accept other people as being like they are? What if I just believe that you're okay? What if I believe that I'm okay? And what if I don't have to take anything from you in order to feel okay today? So anyway, that was a really long time. And so, Mossy, I'm sure that you're regretting now. You told me I could go 45 or 50 minutes, and I'm just going to stop and say thank you, everybody, for a forum to be here because, for me, the most important thing about, it says in the book, what this says here, it says, there would be a little gathering of men and women happy in their release and constantly thinking of how they might present their discovery to some newcomer. But in addition to these casual get-togethers, it was customary to set apart one night a week for a meeting to be attended by anyone and everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. So what it's saying is that what our meetings are about is for people to have the opportunity to talk about what it's like to live life on a spiritual basis. And when I hear people talking about that, that's the most exciting thing to me because like there's nothing I like more than sitting around a table outside the Circle K, eating some ice cream and asking, well, what's your higher power like? And how do you relate to your higher power? And these are the moments in which the message is carried, I believe. And this is the moment in which, like, the joy of alcoholics, the freedom of Alcoholics Anonymous is made real for me, because this is what happened, is that a higher power was promised and a higher power has shown up. And I thank all of you who had the doors open. So when I showed up, I was able to find this place and I was able to find what I needed. Thanks, Mossy.
Thanks, Vibhishana. I got a lot from your share there, dude. To start with, I have no idea what social drinking is. People talk about that and I'm away with the fairies. I took, my first drink was 2 flagons of cider, 2 6-packs of Lancer, and that was as a 13-year-old. And I drank with 2 guys that ended up being winos on the streets of Galway. And it didn't get any better from there. And it was bought with stolen money as well, by the way, my first drink. So it didn't get any better from there. And the other thing was the drink always brought me guilt, shame, and remorse. I never fitted in at school. I never fitted in anywhere. I didn't fit into my family. I felt different. I felt unloved. I felt uncared for. I felt threatened, especially in school. And I just was not a part of. And I did anything to stop myself feeling that way. And for me, it was drink, drugs, anything that I could get my hands on it to stop me feeling this way would do the job. And coming into this fellowship, it's not really that I wanted to, but I couldn't continue living the way I was. I spent 4 years going in and out, and during that time, all you'd hear was you don't take a drink, you go to a meeting and everything's all right. It wasn't. Because I could stop drinking, I just couldn't stay stopped, and I couldn't stay stopped because I didn't feel right. And the last time I got sober, I woke up in the morning on the 12th of July, 1989. I walked down the stairs and I thought, it's all my fault. And that was the first time I took responsibility for anything. And I was lucky that I started going to meetings, regular meetings, and I met a guy called Jimmy Hickey, who threw the big book at me. And he said, this is how you get sober. If you want to get sober this way, if you want to get sober, this is how you do it. If you don't, he says, take your misery and then pop out of here. And I didn't want to leave either, because I just felt it was something there was something different about this guy. And he knew I couldn't read. So he told me to read a line until I knew what was in the line, read a paragraph until I knew what was in the paragraph, and read no more than 1 page a day. But I had to know what was in that page every single day. And it's the only way I could learn. Everything had to be done his way, not my way. I didn't appreciate it, to be quite honest with you, the way he spoke to me. But he promised me a life beyond my wildest dreams. And I lived that for the last 35 years. I learned how to be a son to my parents. I got the opportunity to make amends to them. I learned how to be a father to my kids. And I got the opportunity to make amends to them. I became the person I'm supposed to be. And like it or not, I think I'm a great guy. I love myself today. I feel a part of. And it's the only thing I've ever felt a part of. I feel a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I feel accepted here. So that's it from me. Mick, take it away, man.
My name's Mick and I am an alcoholic. For the grace of God and this fellowship, I don't need to take a drink. Thank you very much. I identified with lots of it, especially not fitting in. I didn't fit in anywhere and I didn't know what was wrong with me. And I found out having a drink kind of was the solution to make me feel whole. And I came into Alcoholics Anonymous because people were on my back. And in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I stopped drinking, I still didn't know who I was. You know, I had all them old feelings, and for a long time I was a dry drunk. And then I started listening to you people, and I was listening to things like what you were saying, and I thought, well, I haven't tried that yet. I'll try that. If that works, that's okay. If it doesn't, that's all right as well. And I was afraid to tell you who I was and what I was and where I came from, because I was a liar, cheat, and a thief as a child and everything from my childhood, you know. And I did tell you who I was, and you've loved me for it. And I had to learn to take that into my home, the love you showed me. And it became a home, not a house, but a home. I learned to love my wife. You know, I think I married her for lust because she filled in the hole in my soul for a while. And then we grew into soulmates. She was Al-Anon for 40 years, you know, and a black belt at one, that way, you know. But we grew and we grew well, you know, and I've had things happen to me in recovery that I never dreamt I'd be able to cope with. Like she died. And I'm not needed to take a drink because as soon as I went to a meeting, people said it's a day at a time. It's not important how long I've been in this fellowship. It's important what I do today. And I try to practice what you people in the big book have shown me. And I have a very good life today. I'm not a well person. Spiritually, I feel good, you know, and that's most important to me. I want to thank you all for keeping me sober. And I've said enough. We've come to the end of the meeting and the promises, well, I'll read them because Roseanne's gone off. If we are painstaken about this phase of our development, we will be amazed before we're halfway through. We are going to know a new freedom and a new happiness. We will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door upon it. We will comprehend the word serenity and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will see how our experiences can help others. That feeling of usefulness and self-pity will leave us. We will lose interest in selfish things and gain interest in our fellows. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. we will intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we could not do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises? We think not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. They will always materialize if we work for them.
Thanks, Mick. And thanks, Kathleen, for doing timekeeper. And those that done the readings. Who done the first reading? Kathy. Yeah. Yeah, thanks everyone, all the co-hosts. Especially thanks Vibhishana. And that's it, Mick.
Reminder that our meetings are on 7 days a week at 8:30 a.m. UK time. We also have a lunchtime meeting every Sunday at 1 p.m. UK time. This is a meditation meeting.
And on Saturdays, at 6 p.m, we have the Old Timers meeting, an extended share recorded for the archives on Thursday evening. We have a meeting at 7:30. We use the same meeting code for all our meetings.
Stick around for fellowship after the meeting. If you want a breakout room after the meeting, please let the hosts know.
And the yellow card, who you see here?
What you hear here,
when you leave here,
let it stay here.
And that's it, folks. Just to get Vibhishana to lead us out with the serenity prayer. And again, Vibhishana, great chair. And we've had a number of requests for the recording already. So there you go.
Thank you very much. And I do have to actually apologize to the group because I had no idea how long I was going. I was in some sort of a fugue state. So I am grateful to be here, though, and I'm grateful for you all. And let us end with the serenity prayer, which says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things
we cannot change, the things we can, the wisdom to know the difference. Please stay, my Liz used to say. Thank you, my friend. Oh, dear Lord.